Hello, my name is Amanda Foxon-Hill and this is Suddenly Autistic. It's my video log of my journey as a late diagnosed autistic woman through the various insights and I suppose things that I've been thinking about, working through and trying to shed some light on for my own growth really and comfort. This video is going to be a little bit about, it's sort of about anxiety, and in particular about life anxiety, about what are we here for, what is the point, what is my purpose, what are my goals and aspirations, and how that has been, how coming up with that, an answer to that, has been or is being shaped by me now knowing that I'm autistic. So that's what I want to talk about, and hopefully the words will come out in a better way than just then, but you never know. So I've been trying to think about what's next for me, what's next on my journey. So for a bit of background context, so I'm 48 now, nearly 49. I'll be 49 in a couple of months. It seems like a good age, especially given that both of my children have left home. They're now young adults pursuing their own lives and careers. They're not requiring the vast amount of my resources. I also have my own business, which has been quite a big thing in my life, and that has also been undergoing some changes as I now have different financial goals, I suppose, or needs. My needs for the level of income that I was bringing in are a bit less. I have also been very tired. I have been struggling with a lot of burnout, post-traumatic, the CPTSD, the complex PTSD from both my family of origin and this family that I've created, or helped to create, I should say. There's been a lot of trauma and growth required from me and all of us really to get through that. So I'm sitting here now on the cusp of being 49, about 2 and a bit years into my autism diagnosis, and thinking, right, so I'm a good way into my life, but it's definitely not finished yet. I have some potential, I have some skills, I could put this to good use. So what am I here for? It's essentially what this is about. How could I sum up what I'm here for now, and what the sort of mindset I'm in now, the headspace I'm in now. So just thinking from where I am now to try and get me to what is my life purpose, what is the vision I have, where am I aiming to for this next phase of my life. And this next phase might be a year, it might be 10 years, it might be the rest of my life. I don't believe that at this stage in my life I need to set like 5-year plans, etc. From being quite young up to relatively recently, I have found it useful to make myself a timed plan with some tangible goals of what I want to achieve or what I'm aiming for, what my purpose is, I guess. Those goals may be things like buy a house or create a home. Would be another alternative to that, because I understand that you don't have to buy a house to create a home, and you can buy a house and not create a home. So it's that kind of thing. So when I was thinking about myself now that I don't have a need for all of that, or now that some of that has been ticked off, I guess you could say, some of it the relationship to all of that has shifted. I thought of this. I thought, well, she came to this planet, she got hooked on an idea, she researched it very deeply, and then she ran out of energy and left a pile on the floor. That's where I am now. And that doesn't feel great. But I'm grappling internally and externally, like this, with what do I mean by that? What is in that? There's something in that that's really important. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And this is where my anxiety comes, my existential anxiety. I want to say at this point that I don't have a fear of death, as a construct or a thing. it's a life stage that I accept as a scientist, as a human, as something that's alive. I accept that circle of life and the lack of control we have over so much of that. So when I'm talking about existential crisis, it's not a fear of death as such, or even in particular. It's not so much a fear. I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. I'll have to come back to that. It's more of a something. There's something there, it's what am I just putting myself in a spin cycle of a washing machine, and there's a lot of you imagine if you put yourself into a washing machine. Don't do it. I don't think there's a lot. I don't think it would be a good idea. But if we could go into that, you're going to get pummeled. It's going to be hard to catch your breath. You probably, won't get out of there alive a lot of the time. It's not going to be a lot of fun at all, if any. And I suppose that's where I'm coming from. Am I creating myself a life and goals and purposes that are pummeling me in a washing machine of not all pain? It's probably not quite as good an analogy as I really thought it might be, but one that's unnecessarily painful. And I suppose where I'm coming with that is somewhat of a, have I adopted, am I sticking onto an ableist mindset with my life's purpose and all of that? I also want to say at this point that I'm not going through all of this because I feel like I, as Amanda, as a person, as an individual, have to be relevant or particularly important or famous or whatever noteworthy measure can go on that, beyond what serves my purpose. So it's a self-serving bubble, I guess, in that way, in as much as I recognize myself as an individual on an individual level, and that individual level I have some capacity, and I wish to explore that and create something or to utilize that in some meaningful way that at least doesn't cause any harm. And that goes back to my washing machine analogy, including harm to myself. So I don't know whether that really made sense, but it kind of gives a bit of an insight into, or a bit of an explanation as to what I've been doing. It's anxiety over my life journey. This is what this is, and especially triggered from me being this age, a woman who's perimenopausal. So I do have I do notice now changes in my body. I must say, not so much changes in my mood or mental capacity. I have had much worse, for me, changes in my mental capacity from general tiredness, anxiety, ADHD type symptoms, trauma, than I'm finding. It's like the perimenopausal symptoms, just for those who might be interested, are not really featuring, other than the fact that it is another little thing on top of all those other things. So I am getting more tired when I'm having those surges or reductions in whatever is going on, who knows. So it is making me a little bit more physically tired and a little bit more physically vulnerable to things like colds and viruses, etc., blah blah blah. But otherwise, no, it's not a patch on the trauma and the other things in terms of my mental health. So going back to this, what am I here for and whatnot? And like I said, for my own benefit, really, to give me a little sense of orientation. I guess the way I'd look at this process for me and why I'm grappling with it and trying to understand myself is that while I understand at this stage in my life, I don't need to set up necessarily, like, I've got the infrastructure now, I've got a safe home, or I've got a comfortable safe home, I've got all these things that are more tangible goals that people work towards. There is an element of wanting to maintain that's there, so there is an element there of responsibility and whatever, and that the capacity to retain and maintain does intersect with my disability now that I know that I'm autistic, because I can no longer think, well, when I'm more mature, I'll have more grapple over my mental health and blah, 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 blah. No, not necessarily. I'm autistic, there are vulnerabilities, and there's a disabling aspect to that. So this might be as good as it gets. And I guess that's the other part of where I'm coming from, is this as good as it gets for me? Where should I set how do I know what my potential is, and and what aspirations should I have? And when I say should, I'm very much talking about for myself. I don't feel the need from external sources to prove myself at all. So my life anxiety, one of the questions that I have that's coming up for me a lot at the moment is, am I just wandering through life now? Is that what it is? And if I am, is that enough? Is that, and when I say enough, is it enough for me? Is this reaching my potential? Is this giving me meaning? Is this what I'm particularly here for, or what I imagine I'm here for? Now, to answer that, I've got to know what my purpose is, so I have to come to that in a minute. So if I'm just wandering through life, which may be the case, and that may be fine, but why is it that I find that even then, if that's the point, if this is the meandering phase of life and I should enjoy it and smell the roses, why do I still feel like I'm playing catch up? Why am I constantly having to readjust and recover from my meandering? If I truly am meandering through life and just smelling the roses, appreciating things that are beautiful, being that serene, calm, whatever presence or whatever it is in the world, because now I'm mature and I've reached that place. I don't believe that, but if I am, there's stuff in there that's important. So playing catch up, that feeling of playing catch up, I'm realizing that those feelings are partly my autism, partly my ADHD. This is my neurology. I am in the minority of the world in terms of how my brain is wired. And while it may not be as small a minority as people once thought, because more and more people are being diagnosed and recognizing their neurodiversity or their trauma-affected brains or their addictions or whatever, it doesn't make it any easier to accept when it places limitations upon you, or it places hurdles in your way. So hurdles is a good analogy there. So I'm meandering through my beautiful life, enjoying things, being full of gratitude and love and creating art and making things wonderful. And something has placed hurdles, physical hurdles in the way. So as I'm meandering and watching birds and whatever, oh, there I am, I've tripped over again. That's how it feels. That's what it feels like. And those hurdles are not external. They're not somebody putting them there that I can then go, I'm going to rage against you or the system or whatever. These are coming from internally from me. This is my autism and my ADHD meeting the friction of the normal world. So I'm sitting here saying there is nothing wrong with me thinking, well, this next phase of my life is about meandering. There's nothing wrong with me then setting a little bit of a goal or a mind map of what meandering for me might look like and what I want to get out of that. It still means that I have to accept, because of the way that my autism shows up and my ADHD shows up, that there will be hurdles in that. And that's not to say that I'm expecting life should be easy going from now on. But there is a difference between, and I think this is the invisible disability difference. There's a difference between, I accept that life will continue to get hard in some ways, and there'll be difficulties and external forces and whatever. I mean, look what happens in the news. Look at the climate. We live in the Blue Mountains and there's trees. There's going to be bushfires again. I accept, and I don't like it, but I accept that there's going to be things that are hard. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things that are within my body that are outside of my control, that I can construct and live a very nice, safe life that I choose and curate and protect. And I'll still be falling over my own feet because my own feet are not under my control. My own brain is not always under my control. My arms and legs are not always under my control. That's the thing. And that's friction is partly coming from 46 years, of ableism. Because before I knew I was autistic, I just thought I was a bit of a clumsy clot. What am I here for? That's explored the what if it's just meandering, even if that's enough, more than enough. Sounds blissful, sounds gorgeous, like a permanent holiday. Even on my holiday, I look, it's that whole thing, isn't it? You can't run away from yourself. Everywhere you look, there you are. Well, I'm there too. So then I get on to more action-packed strategies of, well, okay, well, if I'm going to have these problems, I may as well do something. And this is still me. So I do have these goal happiness cards, and what I've done is I've put them into little SWOT analysis piles, because that's very me to do that kind of thing. So I came up with some things, some questions I had around my life anxiety. Things like, am I doing it right? As in, am I doing life right? These are the things that go through my head when I'm thinking, my anxiety is rising around this existential question. Am I doing life right? What even are the rules? What are the rules? I do like rules. As much as I don't like rules, I do like rules. It's a funny thing. I don't quite understand. It's my autistic thing. I can have the rules, I can protest about the rules, I can think they're stupid, and I still like them. Because I know I can have a it's an anchor. Whatever. Anyway, that sounds silly, but that's the way it is. So am I doing life right? What are the rules to this life? What is the point, or is there no point? But what does having no point look like? How do I know if I'm achieving my goal of living pointlessly? That is the loop. This is anxiety talking. My anxiety is coming from within, and it's about the things that make me me. So then I got myself some little value cards, and what I did is I picked out the ones that I thought were really aligned. So the values that are most aligned to my life purpose, as without me even knowing what my purpose is. So I still don't know what my grand purpose is in a sentence, like an elevator pitch for me going forward, but it doesn't matter, because what I've realized is these are the things that are really important to me. These are the values. So curiosity, I'm a scientist. It makes sense that my curiosity is a key value that I want to take forward. So even more so than that being an aspect of me in my working life, this being curious, open-minded, interested, eager to explore, discover and learn is actually a core value within me, and it is what makes me me. To me, it's not work, it's not a doing word, it's a mindset of being. So I can be curious and I can act out of curiosity, which I feel is core to me. There's fun, which I didn't put in straight away, but I actually then went back and said, well, yes, I do like to make things fun. To be fun-loving, playful, light-hearted, humorous, to seek, create, encourage, engage in fun-filled or humorous activities. And generally, whenever I do anything, there is an element of fun and having fun in it. If it's not fun, it's hard to justify sticking with it, which is a funny thing, because often I can look at my life and think, oh, this doesn't feel like fun, because of the physical pain and the struggles and the mental torture that I put myself through. So I have a feeling that I value finding the fun wherever I can as a counterbalance to the pain. Now, I think I've put this in my life's goals and purpose, but what I also have to do is remember that as a vulnerability, because I shouldn't also be using fun and seeing the funny side to, as I've said in other videos, sugarcoat the shit show. So that's one. Industry is another one, and creativity is my last one. So industries, be industrious, hardworking, committed, proactive or dedicated. I do value that as a core value, and it's that if you look up whether they're current, but they were certainly past, the definition of autism, I think it is, or is it ADHD, like being driven by a motor. You know, I feel a bit like that I'm an engine, or that I'm a machine. And that's an analogy that's surprisingly accurate to how I lived most of my life before I realized I had feelings, or at least a range of feelings. But yeah, being industrious, to me, I do remind myself I'm not just a human doing, I'm a human being, but there is an element of industry and production and creating outcomes that is core to me in particular. So I do value that. I have broadened and deepened my understanding of what that means to incorporate things like even like active rest and playfulness. So that's what I mean. And then yes, creativity, to be creative or innovative at work or at play. So my life sort of goal, I suppose, for the foreseeable future is going to be based around or incorporating those things. So curiosity, fun, industry, and creativity centered around myself. So that is within that lies my life's goal or purpose. So to be those things, or to put them towards something. And then the way that I will hopefully be able to construct an actual picture of what that looks like, because this is the way it's going to be done, the things that I value, is to do with this really, and that's contribution. So to contribute, give, help, assist, share, or be generous. I realise that my goal in life has always been to be a contributor, to make a contribution, to make things count, hopefully in a positive way, or at least not in a negative way. As one gets older, as I've got older, I've realised that sometimes my sharing, my contribution has not been as positive and well received as I would have liked it to be, and sometimes it has been because of misunderstandings around my autism and ADHD or trauma presentation, my lack of skills essentially for trauma, and my emotional intelligence problems. But it remains important to me that whatever I end up doing or however I end up presenting, that it's towards making the world the place that you want it to be, being the change you want to see, and that's making a contribution. So so that's my life goal. My strengths, I did a bit of a SWOT analysis, so they're my words for that. My strengths that I can bring to this next phase of my life are my authenticity, mindfulness, honesty, persistence, and courage. So I have always felt like I've been quite authentic to myself, although that's a joke when I didn't know I was autistic for so long, but I was as authentic as I could be. I was always genuine and true and real. I haven't ever identified as a strong masker. People who are good at masking usually work out the social rules, and they construct a mask that's going to be at least not harming them, and hopefully giving them some kind of either advantage or being able to put their best foot forward, so basically a highlight reel. For me, any time when I haven't been, when I've had to suck up what I really felt or put a pause on it or something, it hasn't covered usually my inner feelings. I've broken out in hives or whatever, or just not being able to be comfortable. And it's I've either said yes when I mean no, and then ended up with more work, and then just ended up in a mess with that, and then later on going, actually I didn't mean to do this. This is ridiculous, and then that would cause confusion and people wouldn't like it. So it didn't work out well for me, or people would just from the outset go, oh, well, I don't like you then. So yeah, so that's why I say that. And then we come on to the other things, don't we? Then we come on to the other things. So I'm not going to do opportunities in this video because it's already getting quite long. But there are some opportunity cards too. But my strengths, then my weaknesses. Weaknesses, here is where I start to see the effects that, or the difficulties I'm having with this next step. So my weakness is around acceptance. So to be open and allowing of things I dislike or don't want in myself, others, and the world around me. Now I've put that as a weakness because I struggle with acceptance of things that I don't think are right, and I can tend to go into that black and white thinking unless I've done a lot of research, which some people might call overthinking, into what else is acceptable, what are the other rules, what are the other options. So it's not that I can't accept things that I don't like, but it takes me a lot of time, and so I put it as a weakness because in that gap of me understanding and then accepting something, there's a heck of a lot of frustration. Maybe there might be a lot of distress, And then there needs to be quite a lot of my mental resources in trying to bridge that gap or close that, or address that friction point. So acceptance is one of my weaknesses. Responsibility is another one, and not for the reason that's often, I suppose, or more popular, and that's not wanting to take any responsibility. Mine is the other side, which is being hyper responsible, feeling more responsible for other things, like the reactions of others to me or anyone else, how other people feel, taking on more responsibility or all of the responsibility when actually it's not my job to do so. So that is another weakness. Order, to be orderly and organized. Now this really plays into my goals of wanting to make a contribution in the world. I, as someone who's autistic, value order and organization and systems and spreadsheets and planning, etc. I love that. I also have my ADHD, which spices things up a bit and makes that actually quite hard to achieve. So yeah, I can make the lists and do the things, but sticking to them. For example, I've got 4 drawers in the bedroom, t-shirts, pajamas, undies and socks, and I actually don't know, whatever the other thing should be. I clean them out, put everything in the right things, and then time and time again, I should label them, but time and time again, I forget which one's which, and then I mix them all up, and then it all gets cacked up within a week, and then I'm back to square one, can't find my other sock, That's how I am. It's a constant, perpetual thing. So being better ordered, and the way where I put this as a weakness is because then it becomes anxiety, because I have my goals towards making a contribution creatively, blah blah blah. Order is how other people get to use that. So things like, if I'm a good scientist and I create stuff and I get somewhere, I do an experiment and find some results, I need to order that data in a way to make it valuable for other people, or else it's just chaos. So I see order as a bit like the librarian, or a bit like the librarian, the cataloger. So that's a weakness of mine, because I can fall down in that. So I can do all the stuff and then fail to order it, even though I really value it. So there's that huge friction in my own life. Connection, to engage fully in whatever I'm doing, to give the activity or the person my full attention. That's also a weakness of mine because of the monotropism. So autistic people do have, like me, have that monotropic thought. So we get on a train track and we just stay on that train track. And it can be, so yeah, getting into attention, no problem at all. But then getting off it and changing and switching it up can be very, very difficult, very time consuming and quite frustrating, and also a little bit upsetting and anxiety provoking. So that's another weakness too. It's not that I don't do it and I can't do it, it's that I sometimes can't get out of it. And then fairness and justice. Again, treating myself and others justly and fairly, to stand up for fairness and justice. Again, I can have a funny relationship with this because I am very rules-based and I do like people to be treated fairly and justly. I like justice to be done. Where I come unstuck often is knowing what that looks like, what's appropriate, who should take on the fight, if there is one to be had, how to address things when there might be conflict or confusion. So they're my weaknesses. It's a huge amount of things, value I place on those things, but then I don't necessarily have the skills or the insight or the comprehension to be part of the solution. The other 2 piles that I will go through quickly is the disability. So so we've got my strengths and my weaknesses. Then I've got the cards that I've picked out that might make it difficult for me to construct a life purpose because of that has a reduced level of friction, that is a bit easier for me because of my disability. And the other one is the trauma. So the disability is my ADHD and autism. The trauma is the trauma. So in terms of disability, I've got safety, gratitude, caring, self-care, flexibility, supportiveness, assertiveness, and cooperation. You could say that my weaknesses are also very heavily linked with my disability, but I put those separately because I see them as both, but more personality, because this is more the things that I personally value, whereas these cards under my disability are truly disabling from my autistic perspective, regardless of what my personal goals and ambitions might be. So to be cooperative is one, cooperation. My disability makes it difficult for me to be cooperative and collaborative with others. It doesn't make it impossible. It doesn't make it not rewarding or not fun. It makes it difficult. And so if I am going to have a life goal that involves cooperation, teamwork, etc., I have to account for the fact now that I know I'm autistic and that this is a weakness of mine, this is a disability of mine. There are things about the way I communicate that others are going to find difficult. There's things about my capacity that makes it hard for me to plan and incorporate with others. Assertiveness, to stand up for my rights and request what I want while being respectful of myself and others. I don't have any problem with the concept of being assertive or with being assertive when I'm aware of what I want or what the situation requires. My problem is, again, my disability putting things out of sync, so I don't always know in real time what I should be assertive about. It can cause me a lot of problems, and that is, again, this interoception, proprioception, social cues and relationships. It's all very autistic. Supportiveness, to be supportive and helpful and available to myself and others. It's still very hard for me to be truly supportive to myself and to others when I do not fully understand my capacity. Where am I supposed to pitch it? Is it my best day, my worst day, the days in the middle? But there isn't a middle day because it's always floating around up and down, and then how do I know what of trying to understand other people's theory of mind stuff, that is. Flexibility, to adjust and adapt ready to difficult or changing circumstances. This is going to be a problem for me because of the autism. I am prepared to be flexible. I do like the idea of flexibility. It's not something that I am actively against or pushing away, and I am going to struggle with it because of my monotropism, because of my routines, my rules orientation, and all the information that I might need to feel safe and comfortable with making a shift. Caring and self-care kind of takes care of itself. If I didn't know I was autistic for so many years, well, I'm not very good at caring for myself. I'm getting better, but the same with other people. Knowing what other people need, knowing what I need, and then providing it, or at least making space for it. Not against it, will do it if I can see it or if it's made aware, if I'm made aware, but so often we're not made aware or we can't see it. Gratitude, again, I find it not impossible to have gratitude and appreciation for the beauty in the world. My whole business is called Realize Beauty, so I'm very aware of and I seek out and I do appreciate these things. But again, it can be really hard because of my disability to know what to expect, what's the level, what's be grateful for what, because I can get stuck in monotropic thinking when things are bad. It can take a lot to have that flexibility and that sort of overview of your own life. And then safety I've put in here. So these are my disability things. It's very hard for me to keep myself safe because my capacity and my insight are coming at different levels and different waves all the time. And then there's my self-reflection and, me, my interoception, what's going on within my body. I don't always know all of that in real time. So it's really hard in a world that's spinning at a constant space and rate and feels like it's just going on and on. Things are always having to get somewhere for me to catch up. So that's the same thing, playing catch up. And then the trauma. So the trauma, kindness, compassion, friendliness, forgiving, trust and respect. Respect for myself. It's hard sometimes for me to respect myself. It's not impossible again, but it gets hard because I feel sometimes that I should and could, those should and coulds and whatever, always and nevers, that do better basically. But the trauma pulls you back and it takes time to unlearn mindsets and concepts of yourself and of others even when you know better, it's hard to always do better, and especially when you're under stress and trying to get somewhere or achieve something and you're already out of sync. So I do respect myself and I do respect others. Usually that's going to fall down on the me side, and I will do things that are not really respectful of myself, and then I'll judge myself harshly. Being trusting is fine. I'm usually quite trustworthy. It's hard enough for me to be in the truth, let alone to think up another alternative truth or a lie, so I'm quite trusting, but I can sometimes be over trusting or extend that to others when it's not necessarily the right thing to do. Forgiveness, I find it hard to forgive myself sometimes for things when I think I should know better, even though it's not. There's good reasons often why I have done what I've done or said what I've said or thought what I've thought, but I'm still struggling with that. Friendliness, being warm, friendly, open, accepting, and agreeable. Again, it's a trauma response. I have been so heartbroken in terms of and hurt in terms of, when I found out or discovered that the people that I thought were friends or had my interests at heart, or at least were meeting me halfway, were actually not really meeting me halfway, or they didn't really. I was a casual acquaintance, not a friend. That can make that really hard. Again, not impossible, and this isn't a universally bad experience, but this is something that I find hard for my trauma. Compassion and kindness, I think that we'll leave it at that, because same sort of thing. So in wrapping this up, I'm going through this process now of trying to think, well, yeah, okay, what do I want the future to be? How can I reduce some of my anxiety, have a clear yet not too prescriptive vision for the next phase of my life, seeing as I'm in this, I've got this brilliant opportunity, I've got this new insight, still newish with the autism and ADHD. How can I grab onto that and then really make sure that I put my best foot forward, and I can look back on this phase in, say, X amount of years or whatever, and feel quite proud of what I've achieved there in however I want to measure it. I had a look on the NDIS, which is the National Disability Insurance Scheme or something. It's an Australian scheme for disabilities. I'm not on it. I couldn't even fill out the forms. It was too difficult. When they're setting goals for people with disability, they talk about person-centered planning, which I thought was quite a good idea, because in the past, what I've done especially when I was younger, was put in goal setting. See grey hair there. So it'd be like, things like get married, buy a house, have some kids, get a goldfish, whatever, their goal. This is person-centered, so it's more about the whole person, bringing in every aspect of themselves rather than just an outcome. I have tried to use the values cards because they do make me think. They've got nice pictures on them and they've got a bit of a description, so it makes it easier for me to understand what that means and to think about myself in those terms. In terms of what the internet sort of says about your potential as a human being and what that word potential means, a lot of it is about identify your inner voice and listen to yourself, make conscious efforts to do the things that you're thinking of doing, define your goals well, set your milestones, and then monitor and measure, that whole being your own manager. When I read the first one of those, identify your inner voice and listen to yourself, I immediately felt a little bit of ableism in that, because, again, my level of insight must have been shocking to not know myself for all those years. Although, having said that, being generous to myself, the autism criteria has evolved throughout my whole life, and there's no way I would have felt of myself as autistic when I was a kid, because the criteria and me were very different things. It's only as I've got older that the criteria sort of met me where I am. So, I guess there's a bit of generosity there, but I still feel like I'm not the best person yet. Like, I do have the best insight in my own life in some ways, but also lots of blind spots. So identifying my inner voice is something that I have a bit of a disability. I'm a bit disabled at, and I do need a different set of input and a different time frame and materials than, say, a neurotypical person. Basically, yeah, the word potential and how things do on, if you read it on the internet, it's all around growth. Like there's a lot on growth mindset, winning, aiming high, be the change you want to see in the world, all of that kind of thing. And like I said, some of that I feel now at my age is I'm too tired. I don't want a growth mindset. What the heck is all that? It sounds a bit wanky if I'm honest. But I guess my take home is that it doesn't have to be. It's about me and my life. Why is it important for me to have this sort of deliberation and navel gazing? Well, go back to the beginning. It's about what I value. I want to make a contribution to the world, and I can't make a contribution that's if I don't know what I'm contributing. And you could say that just turning up and being yourself, and that's that meandering through life. But then, even then, if that life is still a little bit painful and has all these hurdles that shouldn't really be doing, it shouldn't really be there because you're in your safe zone. Why are you falling over when you've created this safe, happy zone? That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing this so that I can be more aware, so that I can set myself up with a vision of my future and a direction of my future that's more meaningful for me, that's more in line with my ability, and that is respectful of my disability, that allows me to grow and to check myself and measure myself against how is this adding to me making a contribution? What do I have to do and what should I prioritize? It's about orientation, and I don't necessarily think it has to be a accumulation mindset of getting more, being bigger and better and whatever. It can be quite intimate and internal. I suppose my biggest fear is that everything stays internal and navel gazing, and things don't come out, and they don't come out because these disability traps keep tripping me up. And until I've seen where my weaknesses are and constructed a plan that incorporates them and makes space for them, then my greatest fear could be my reality, that my potential does go unmet because she did just keep digging herself into holes and making piles that ended up on the floor. And then if I'm not there anymore, the piles of paper just get burnt and there goes everything. So that's why I'm doing this. I think there's a lot of calories burnt up in thinking and being, and I may as well make it at least accessible, even if it doesn't matter or isn't as valuable to other people. If it's organized and accessible, it will feel nicer to me. It will feel like less junk. I'll be less cluttered in my mind and less cluttered in my environment, and therefore that will be removing some of the hurdles that I'm tripping over in my dream space. And the contribution will be made. Whether it's accepted or valued by others is outside of my control, and that doesn't matter. That is what I am doing. So I kind of feel like I've worked my way through a bit with you there, but hopefully that's been relatively interesting. See you soon.